From the films Rocky to Rambo, and from Raging Bull to all the new incarnations of Star Trek, one man has been making up the stars and creating the creatures for over 50 years. Welcome, I'm Barry Kibrick, and I'm joined today by the Academy Award-winning Michael Westmore, whose book Makeup Man is a fascinating journey on how the most iconic characters of Hollywood were created. Michael, I just mentioned to you that if I had the opportunity, I would do 3 separate shows with you. I would do one just about your family. I would do one about the work you did on Raging Bull, Rocky, Rambo, and then 18 years creating all the Star Trek characters. But we're only going to have a chance to do one right now, so all I want to say is welcome and thank you so much for being here with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, this is just amazing. You read this book, and as I said before, you are one of the most humble men. You take almost no credit, yet some of the most memorable characters, the iconic scenes, I don't want to say your creation. We know there's a director behind it. We know there's this, but there's a moment I'm going to share with the audience that I know everyone's going to know, and you figured out how to make it, and that's what a makeup man really does, doesn't he? He or she has got to figure out on the spot what to do.
Sometimes it was a little later. So many times I would wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and figure it out after my mind had been completely blank, especially on my boxing films and the movie Mask that I won the Oscar on. It's like things that have been bothering me for weeks, how I was going to solve it, would come to me early morning.
It's amazing. I want to bring up some of your family. The Westmores have over 2,500 film credits and television credits. Began with your grandpa George.
Yes.
He established, before him, there was never makeup used in Hollywood. He established the makeup, the concept of it.
The department. Before that, like stage now, actors did themselves, but things didn't match, depending on what their night was like before. Buster Keaton or somebody come in drunk in the morning and his makeup wouldn't match. So grandfather and morticians and clowns who were in the makeup profession and what they were doing in their life created the first guild in Hollywood back in the early 1920s.
Now, I want to, as I said, if I mentioned all of the Westmores, we wouldn't, but at least I have to also mention your dad, Montague Westmore, Montague, known as Monty. Gone with the Wind.
Yes.
Doesn't get much, in fact, to this day, I believe if you calculate the box office gross due to our present station, it still is the largest grossing film of all time. And he did the most everybody's makeup on that particular film.
They all went through makeup for hair and hairstyling and makeup and costuming.
And then again, before I get just into you, I got to just run down about 10 because I couldn't believe it when you read this. This is part you, part your family. We've got everybody from, as I said, Gone with the Wind. There was a Westmore family project, 10 Commandments, Rosemary's Baby, Breakfast at Tiffany, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Shawshank Redemption, Jurassic Park, Stand By Me, The Towering Inferno, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Blade Runner, not to mention your 3, Rocky, Raging Bull, the Rambo films, and as I said, every episode after the original Star Trek, you were I don't want to say creator because we know Rick Berman and I forgot the other wonderful executive producer of that show who created the
Roddenberry?
Yeah, well, Roddenberry was the main producer.
Yeah.
But they created the concepts, but you created the reality of all of these people and aliens, humanoids, what they looked like.
It's probably one of the best jobs anybody has ever had. I had full creative to go any direction I wanted to. I didn't have to sketch or I wasn't told. I would get a script and it would say alien. I was not told it had to have 4 eyes or 3 ears or something. It was all up to me to come up with a concept for my 18 years there. It was like the best job ever. I still have a book with 100 concepts in it had the show kept going. I could have kept coming up with aliens. I worked out a formula of how to develop them, and it worked like a jewel for the 18 years.
I love how you say every alien and humanoid cannot have eyebrows.
Yeah, yes.
Am I right? That's your line. Every alien and humanoid cannot have eyebrows.
Now he's got a mother or father somewhere that's a human if they do.
I love that line. This, though, again, as we talked a little earlier about, besides the profession, which we're going to get into and what you've done, these are your words. I think every makeup project in my personal and work-related life has become a passionate adventure. And that's what you get when you read this book. You don't only get, by the way, you even give some tips on how to do things even. You do. You give away some big secrets, even a magician's secret, as you once said. But yet, it's the passion that you feel, that you can see why the work, that why these characters, from every Klingon to every Geordie LaForge to Data to whatnot, became who they are because of the passion you had.
Every project was that to me, was a passion. And the worst part about it was I didn't care about the money. On the day after, they came to me and said, we can't afford you. You want to do it or not? I said, I'll do it. And spent months creating disaster makeups for that. But that's what it's always been to me, the creativity of designing something and then having it really work. It was like that meant more to me than thinking that I was, a big shot or was going to make a lot of money out of it. That was the least thing I ever thought of.
And even though you won the Academy Award for Mask, you said that never mattered to you either. No award, no nothing. It was just the ability to create your craft.
Mm-hmm. And with the Emmys, I have 42 Emmy nominations. It was the project and the creativity that was my goal.
A great line. I have to share it with people. For the sake of saving one's ass, I believe I'm even allowed to say that, lie. Now, I thought that was great because so many times you were put in situations where you had to go, yes, I can do that, without ever knowing if you could do that.
If it could be done. Yeah, especially like with having my meeting with Peter Bogdanovich for the movie Mask and showing me pictures of the real boy and saying, can we do this? I said, sure, And with that, I got the job.
First major film you are in charge of yourself is Rocky. And there's a scene there, and I do want to hear your story. You could read it, but there's no way it's going to be told better than you. There's a scene that everybody knows, and that's when Rocky is sitting in the chair right before the 10th round, and he says, cut me, Mick. And he's got to take that razor and cut under his eye, and blood's got to squirt out. Now, we know Rocky's not really cut. Tell us how that was created, because it is in the book. I'm not asking you to give away any secrets.
It was one of those, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning things to figure out. Am I going to put an appliance on there? Am I going to put a tube to it? Am I going to squirt blood out of it? And then I thought, well, like magic, I've got to do something in the reverse. So I actually took a little razor blade and dulled it on one end that would have to draw across the skin. Had a little tube brazed to the back of the razor blade with a little nipple on it, and took a ball off of squirting flour, filled that with blood, put that on there. So when the corner man actually drew that across, all he had to do was squeeze it. And I know in the movie, he squeezes it too soon. I can see it. And I wanted to do a second take. John Avildsen, the director, goes, no, that's great, let's go on, move on.
But you do still say, one of the biggest challenges you've ever faced was that final round of Rocky. There's no doubt that was the tough one.
Yeah, yeah. Because sweat and everything's, everything's falling off your face. And then Talia comes in at the very end, and there's all the music, and there's everything going on, and I've got to keep everything in place. Actually, the glue became so sweat infused that I actually put his rubber face back on with Vaseline. It's all I could find to make it stick fast enough, because as I said, the budget was so nothing that we just had to move so fast.
But yet it's kind of funny, because then you get to Raging Bull, similar, it's a boxing film, nothing similar to Rocky, but it's a boxing film about a real man, Jake LaMotta, and here now the trick becomes a little different, because in Rocky everything is so fast, moving so quickly, it's almost going scene by scene by scene. Mm-hmm. The opposite now is happening in Raging Bull. Everything is shot out of sequence.
We shot for a month in the studio, the boxing, and then going back to New York and having to film, okay, what happened the day after the boxing? We're a month later. I still have my Raging Bull script, of which I had on exhibit in Santa Barbara in the museum this last year. And all the Polaroids are still in there, and all my notes and everything. And I literally had to keep track. And then maybe the day after that was shot somewhere else. So if I had butterfly stitches or a bruise or something, I had to keep continuity.
And Robert De Niro is gaining 100 pounds. I mean, something like that. I mean, that was the funniest. So you had to in fact, he outgrew your fat suit, if I'm correct.
Yes, he did.
And so that you in itself talk about continuity. You had to match a man's weight.
Yes, yeah.
Can you take some off, by the way? I know you could put it on, but can you take some off?
It would be great. That whole thing with Robert, he went from 152 is what he got down when he was actually in the ring. And he gained to about 185 halfway through. And it was that halfway through and he would come to the house when we would do tests, and he would play with my little daughter Mackenzie now, who's an actress. And he said, Marion, my wife said, Robert wants something. He's going to ask you something. And he said, can Mackenzie play my daughter in the movie? So my daughter got her SAG card when she was about 3 years old, because she plays his daughter in the movie. And then from there, he gained weight. There was 2 restaurants, a Thai restaurant and an Italian one over by MGM Studios. And they actually kept tables for him, that if he happened to just stop on the door, nobody could eat at that table. And he literally went up to 215. Force feeding, his stomach was like a rock. You could knock on it. And I said he outgrew the rubber stomach we did for him. And that last part of the picture, when he plays Jake LaMotta in the dressing room at the Barbizon, he was at his peak of his weight. And he didn't want to have a bald cap on and a wig. So we literally, the night before we started, the hairdresser and myself took his hair, combed it all forward, and we literally trimmed out every other hair on his head to show a receding hairline, which he let grow back because we did another True Confessions we did soon after Raging Bull finished. But this man is such, I want to say, a consummate actor, getting into characters and getting out of them. He didn't get caught in them if another movie came up, because I saw him actually, somebody come up and say, hey, Bobby, what about so-and-so? And he said, I'm not that character anymore. I don't know, And he could get off the bus and disappear into the crowds in New York at the end of the night, after he was cleaned up and everything. He's just, I say, with all the people I've worked with, I say there's only a few that I didn't, I'd say 2 that I'd say didn't care if I worked with them again or not. But everybody else in my career was just wonderful to me and myself to them.
You mentioned your wife, Marion, and you met my wife, and I got a sense from reading this that you can see the role that she played in the work that you did. And I know that feeling of support because I get it too. And it's almost like it can't be done if you don't have that.
I say I couldn't have done it without her. Marion and I met at Universal Studios. She was a model for Edith Head, of which, you know, Edith had her offices next to my office there, and she had three women. Marion was the blonde, and we actually didn't even speak for a couple months beforehand. I thought she was stuck up. She thought I was. And finally, I was sitting in a chair behind the stage at the Universal Tours, reading the paper. And the curtains opened up, and she was wearing a wedding dress that Rosemary Forsythe wore in movie Shenandoah, Jimmy Stewart film. And I looked up from the paper, and I'm going, what the hell am I going to say? Our eyes met for the first time. First words I said to her was, do you want to get married? And she said, wait till I change my clothes, and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. We got married 3 months later.
Oh.
So, and the thing is, with my family, we have more divorced women in our family than probably any other family in Hollywood. Between all my uncles,
there's only two Westmores that were ever
Wally, Uncle Wally at Paramount, and myself. You know, it's and we've survived. We just had our 52nd wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations, bless you. The other thing you always do is, I said you were humble, but you also, even when you're the only person on Rocky doing all of the makeup, you say it's always a team. No matter what, it's always a team.
I did, and it's like even through Star Trek, I would have up to as many as 50 extra makeup artists a day when we were in the big Klingons and Vulcan things. And every one of them, I made sure, and every actor, in fact, I've run into actors today who maybe there one day and they'll say, gee, you know, do you remember me? I made a point of meeting every actor every day to let them know everything was okay and they're being taken care of.
So, and I even get the sense from my own makeup and hair person here, the care and attention that that person gives to the person that is going to be on the screen. You're almost the last person they deal with before they really have to
First
become...
and last.
First and last, before they go out and perform. So what you have to do, I don't want to say you're a psychologist, but you become a true confidant.
I'd say one of the greatest examples of that to me, well, was Bobby Darin. He and I would meet at 7 o'clock in the morning, and for 1 hour, I would make him up, put his hairpiece on. We talked about kids. He would tell me all about electronics and music and everything. Once he went to the set, he became, all I did is powder his nose the rest of the day. He became Bobby Darin, the entrepreneur and the killer if he needed to be. And then we wrap at night, we go back, I'd take his hairpiece off, clean him up and dress it for the next day. But I got my 1 hour with him every day. And Jane Alexander, when she was playing Eleanor Roosevelt, and Stallone did it too. He had a recording. Stallone had a power of positive thinking that went for 20 minutes. It took me 20 minutes to do his makeup. With Jane, it took longer because all the pieces of Eleanor as she aged, but she would listen to tapes of Eleanor Roosevelt. And she would get up out of the chair when I finished and become Eleanor Roosevelt for the day. Lunchtime, it was a little strange because she would take her padded clothes off, and here's this nicely figured Jane Alexander walking to the commissary with this ancient face on. But there's been moments like that. I mean, they're in the book too. You know, just haven't forgotten them. It was emblazoned in my mind.
Michael, you know, I'm going to be killed if we don't really get into the Star Trek stuff. And I know that there's no greater fans in this world than those from Star Trek. So I need to just talk to you a little bit about your role, because you came in, not at the original one in the early or mid-'60s, but when they grew up and they started Next Gen and they started Deep Space Nine and all of the rest that came after, you were in charge of creating, without any preconceived notions, you from scratch made these things come alive.
It was, I said, it's a dream come true, because the idea was also to have this fantasy world that we're living in, but also having the viewing audience believe these creatures really existed.
See, how that's the thing. And in fact, one of the things you did was when you had to do, you even wanted to make all the Klingons a little different. You wanted to give everyone a personality. The Borgs, every single one had to have their own personality, whether it was, and it was, you know what it was? It was more than seen. It was what you could end up feeling while you were watching them.
You know, my little secret to the whole thing was, it wasn't Star Wars. It wasn't so bizarre that it had to think, I'm going to make the ultimate type of a creature. I actually picked pieces up from Earth. I would go to a bookstore and buy every new book on the shelf, whether it's reptiles, dinosaurs, bacteria, and I use these for research. And I would take a piece from column A and a piece from column B and maybe C if I needed it, and melt them together. The Klingon heads, I figured I've got so many of these things I've got to come up with that a lot of the earlier ones I thought were a little strange and I couldn't use that concept. I found a book on dinosaur vertebrae. I cut them in half and used those for the bones on the Klingons. And then I had another book on Elizabethan beards and mustaches. And that's what I used, because you can only do so much Fu Manchu in a goatee. So as you see the Klingons progress throughout the 18 years, the beards get more elaborate, whether we put little jewels in them and just dress them differently.
I'm going to know what I'm going to do. I'm going to just go through some of my favorite characters and give me a little bit of it. The blue-skinned Bolians, because they were something that appeared, I believe, even in the feature films afterwards that you worked on.
Yeah, as long as a person was bald, it was easy. But if we had to put a bald cap on the person, it always, which we did with some of the principal people, it would add an extra hour onto the makeup. But it was like a robin's egg blue with watermelon stripes across the head, and it was a band that literally had a cut through it that ran all the way through their head.
You used these words about the Borg. Of all the alien life forms that were created for the reprise of Star Trek, the most memorable in the 18 years of the new series was the Borg. I wanted to make the new Borgs more exciting.
And we did. When the first concept came in, we thought it was wonderful then. But being able to take it, it's like, just show like Geordie's little blinky things. And
by the way, what you're talk about family, your son.
My son, Michael, he was an editor on Deep Space, which thank God he was on the lot, because if something broke or went wrong, I'd say, Michael, quick. Well, I'm editing. Well, I need you on the set, quick.
Wasn't he involved with the blinkies, wasn't he?
Michael came up with the blinkies. Those things up close looked like the Starship Enterprise with a little red light in them. Michael came up with, every time we opened data, he came up with the electronics that, whether it was a fingernail, an arm, side of a head, Michael electrified and built all those for me. And then when it came to the Borg, we had 32 separate eyes that he actually made each one electrically different. And after one or two of them, he thought, I'm going to do Morse code. He actually put Morse code in all those eyes that spelled out his friends' names, his dog's name, the producer's names.
We've got a secret here for Trekkies that are going to go wild.
Yeah, it's like he did that. So he was responsible for all that.
Only because these are my three favorites. I just want quickies on them real quick. 7 of 9.
Jerry Ryan. She actually gave us, I think, a shot in the arm. Became a very popular character, and she still is today, and really a nice lady.
Quark. Because he now is someone living on the spaceship. He's not journeying around, and he's got to be in this bar all the time.
And Armand, the normal Ferengi head we had didn't fit him. It literally squashed his ears too much, so we designed a new head. I designed a new one and built one that actually allowed room for his ears in there.
And last but not least, Data.
Brent he and I bonded from day one. In fact, that's what the day they finally said, well, do you want to do the show? And I said, well, I want to think about it. And they said, well, you got to think fast, because this is Friday, Monday we start doing tests on Data. Did 21 different color tests. And Gene Roddenberry wanted to make him Battleship Gray or Bubblegum Pink. I hated both those colors. So I talked Gene into letting me do him this white gold. because I said, gray's for bad guys, pink is, Barbie's boyfriend. So Brent became that color that he is, and we never changed his makeup, ever. A lot of times we would take and try to improve the makeup and do things. Data's makeup never changed from day one, the process and the colors.
Well, I hope I gave my Trekkie fans a little treat, because I sure know, Michael, you gave me one. And thank you all for joining us. Here is a few last words from Makeup Man. Dreams are what make Hollywood and my job exciting. I hope that most people are fortunate enough to have at least one successful and enjoyable career in their lifetime. I'm Barry Kibrick. Between lots of hard work and a good dash of luck, your dreams may come true, even if you're not from Hollywood. Thank you, Michael, so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
To connect with Barry, like him on Facebook and follow him on Twitter at Barry Kibrick. And to contact Barry directly, view past episodes of Between the Lines, and read his weekly blog, visit us at barrykibrick.com.